So, what kind of crazy nut would decide to build a brand on Pinot Noir from South Argentina?
A masochistic one, I think.
Piero Incisa, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Great having you here today to talk about Barda, about Bodega Chacra, about one of the most exciting, I think, developments in the world of wine probably in the last 10, 15 years.
Thank you.
How did you bump into this?
Like most things in life, totally by chance. I was at the Wine Spectator event in New York in 2002, representing my family winery, Tenuta San Guido, and we went for dinner with my cousin and her partner, who's a Danish winemaker called Hans Vindiers, and they floated a Pinot in the course of dinner, and I thought it was a Pinot from Burgundy. In reality, it came from Patagonia. And Hans and Noemi, they were doing a vineyard down there in which they've started to produce Malbec from very old vines. So I pestered them until they allowed me to go visit them down there to be a cellar hand for the harvest. And on the weekends, I started looking for vineyards, and then through a series of very strange situations, we found this abandoned vineyard that it's on rootstocks, so it's a vineyard that never saw the Philospora. And we started to change the farming approach. We introduced organic and biodynamic farming in an effort to enhance the immune system of the vineyard and to bring it back to balance. And so it took a while, at least 5 years, but we got there, and here we are today.
So then from there you found a couple other patches of older vineyards, right? Very small, we're talking backyard.
Yeah, it's very unusual in a way, in an eerie way, is similar to Burgundy in terms of the size of the plots. Of course, the microclimate is completely different, and so is the landscape, because we're in a desert. It's a high desert, but we're in the desert nevertheless, and it's a desert that was created by the restriction of a river that over 5 million years went from 26 miles to a few hundred yards. And so Italian and Spanish immigrants planted ungrafted vines on the riverbed, started in the late 1800s. So Pinot has been there for at least 80 years. And I think this one of the reasons that we have this genetic material that produces this type of wine today, it's because I think that Pinot managed to mutate enough time in the vineyard. The family members, for the lack of a better word, that were not strong enough died. The strongest survive, and today it thrives because it mutated and it adapted itself. The first plot that I actually purchased is a plot that is approximately 2 hectares, more or less, and it was planted in 1932. The second plot that we bought was this one, that is planted in the mid-80s. And the third plot is a 6-hectare vineyard planted in 1955. And out of these 3 plots, we do single vineyard wines, maybe except for Barda, because Barda is also the recipient of the declassification of the grapes from the 2 top crus. So that allows us to make a better quality of 55 and 32, but also better quality of Barda.
Have these vines mutated so much that you don't know where they actually came from? Like, have you ever checked into it? Like, I presume you've made a couple phone calls.
You know, believe it or not, I didn't. There is a curiosity there, of course. Right. But at the end of the day, you either like what you have or you don't.
Good point.
So going through all these hoops to find where it came from, it would have not necessarily given me anything that would have changed what we do today.
Right.
We speculate it's from France. The Napoletano brothers planted this vineyard, Italians. Then they sold it to another Italian man, Mr. Pirri, who then in turn sold it to me. So this vineyard has always been in hands of Italians, even though it's in South America. Yeah.
Dude, I love this wine. It is so Pinot-y. And when you talk about deserts and you talk about maybe potentially warmer climates, et cetera, I get none of that here. I get a lot of classic, cool climate flavors.
A couple of things. I believe that it's true that we have global warming, but it's also true that through different farming practices, you can offset some of the aspects of the global warming. We're in a desert, we have extreme conditions, so our days are very, very warm. Our nights are cold, very cold. We go from 6 degrees at night to maybe 35 to 38 at times during the day. Luminosity is very intense, so we never have problem with maturation of the grapes. There is a constant breeze that at times turns into a ferocious wind, and that removes pests and bacteria in a natural way from the vineyard. And the riverbed is composed of a little bit of limestone, a little bit of clay, a little bit of sand, and then at 1 meter we find what we find in a riverbed, so pebbles. So the underground rivers that are coming, it's water that comes from the Andes, as they go through all these calcareous masses and pebbles, in turn they acquire a little bit of minerality. So we think, because we don't have any proof of this.
All speculation.
And that comes through in this wine that is very mineral, yet is very floral. We ferment at lower temperatures and really exhibits, I think, a characteristic that is closer to the old world than to the new world. In fact, it's 13.3 alcohol. Some vintages 12 alcohol, so it's really a vintage-driven wine. With a touch of fruit that is not commonly found in the old world, because often autumn comes in a little earlier, so it's not always very possible of that. Yeah.
Are you planting more vineyards from these clones as you go along? Or you're kind of like, no, we're going to hang out and do this for now?
No, we did already. Before the harvest a few years ago, we went and we sampled as many plants as we could. And then we put different colors of rope around them. So when it came to pruning season, we can differentiate the genetic material that we selected. So we made a selection already of our Massal selection, the stuff that we like the most. And we have our own nursery. We don't buy any plants because you never know where they come from. And for me, it was important to preserve the biodiversity that we have within these vineyards. And work with that. I had an opportunity to buy some clones from France, and I did order some, but I felt that it would have been maybe a mistake, because if you bring something from the northern hemisphere with those specific set of microclimatic conditions, you bring that in the southern hemisphere, there will inevitably an adaptation time. And maybe throughout that adaptation time, you're not going to get the results that you want. Maybe the third generation will get them, as often happens in the world of wine. So I'm a bit impatient, and I felt that this was the best way. And we prepare all our genetic material. We selected, and then I've planted already some 6 acres, 2 of which are already in production, and the results are simply quite incredible. We're very happy with it.
You're pretty fired up.
Yeah, we are. And we have an incredible team that is nursing these vineyards. We treat it a little bit like a Japanese garden because we do everything by hand. There is no mechanization.
So the next time you see Argentina and Pinot Noir on a label, well, maybe freak out a little bit based on where it's growing, because not all Argentinian Pinot is Chacra. Look for the name, Chacra, look for Patagonia. They keep it simple for you. Bomb wine. Piero, grazie mille.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Grazie.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.